Homework number 14. The first section asks you to solve each equation for the letter x. On the first equation, I see that the right side has 3 terms. That means 2 of them are alike. So I'm going to rewrite this sentence where I combine those like terms just so that I can shorten it up a bit. When I do that, I notice something. These x terms are somewhat similar, but they are not exactly the same. They are not. So that means that I have an actual solution. I do need to keep solving this problem. They are not exactly the same, so I do not have a special solution. Because if I were to subtract 6x from both sides, it would not cancel out on both sides. I would get a negative 12x plus 2 equals negative 5. So I'm going to keep going here. And for my last step, I'm going to divide by negative 12. And I know that this is not going to be a good-looking answer. 7 and 12 are not in the same fact family. I can certainly check it with my calculator, which I will do now. I will type in here negative 7 divided by negative 12. And I can see that I get a pretty wicked decimal. So I'm going to leave it as the fraction positive 7 over 12. And if you don't know how to reduce it, you could always use the fraction button on your calculator, and you'll notice when I type negative 7 divided by negative 12 as a fraction, it does reduce it to a positive answer. Question number 2. I'm going to add my constant on both sides, leaving me with x divided by 5 equals 4. The inverse operation of dividing is multiplying. You can use parentheses, you can use a timesing dot, either one will work, but it will leave me with an answer of x equals 20. Number 3 requires me to distribute here. 1.2 times x is 1.2x. 1.2 times 2 is 2.4. Use your calculator if you didn't know that. Again, I know these are similar, but they are not the same exact number. Whoops, yikes. They are not the same exact number. So, I need to be careful here. This side of the equation has 2 items, 2 terms, and the right side only has 1 term. So I don't want to do any math with the right side, because if I add 1.2x, that side would be empty. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to subtract 1.2x from both the left and right sides, and now I have a constant on the left and a coefficient on the right. I'm going to divide by negative 2.4, and that leaves me with my final answer of negative 1. Number 4. I have x's on both sides, so it doesn't actually matter which x I subtract, but I like my x's on the left. So I'm going to subtract here, and luckily for me they have common denominators. So 3 minus 6 is negative 3, and the denominator stays the same. Now I'm going to add 15 to both sides. And for my last step, I'm going to clear my fraction. And the opposite of timesing by negative 3/5 is dividing by negative 3/5. So you could write this. It is acceptable. But in general, we don't divide by fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal, right? We flip that fraction over and we multiply by the reciprocal. This leaves me with an isolated x and a negative 45. Use your calculator if you need to. Number 5, I'm going to distribute here and here, giving me 20 minus 12x, and then over here, minus 12x and plus 20. And this time, we do have an exact match. And that's exciting, because whenever your x's on the left and right side are an exact match, you can take a shortcut to one of these solutions. And which one it is depends on the constants. If they match, then everything's a match, right? Infinite solutions. And if they're different, then it would be no solution. So we have infinite solutions for our equation. Next section. Identify the rate of change and the y-intercept. In order for that to happen, your sentence must be written in slope-intercept form where the y is by itself. This one, number 6, it has that. Y is by itself, so the constant is the y-intercept, and the coefficient of x is the slope. Notice I don't write the x. Number 7 is a little bit different because the y is not isolated. I'm going to divide everybody by 3, and that gives me a y all by itself. My new sentence is 4x minus 7. 4 is my rate of change, minus 7 is my y-intercept. The same issue is going to happen with number 8. I am going to divide by 5 so that I isolate my y, but you'll notice 2 cannot be evenly divided by 5. So I leave it as a fraction. I don't change it to a decimal. I leave it as a fraction. And that gives us a rate of change of 2/5 and a y-intercept of -3. Describe in words how to find the y-intercept when all you are given is its linear equation. Well, this is a linear equation. So if I gave you a sentence that looked like that, how would I know which one is the y-intercept? Well, when written in slope-intercept form, and you can even say what that looks like, y equals mx plus b. The y-intercept is the constant in the b position. The next 3 questions ask you to write the equation of the line, and you can write it in slope-intercept form by writing a y first, the slope as the coefficient of x, and the y-intercept in the b value. Number 10, the slope is 7, the y-intercept is 5. You could also write it in the order in which you were given the numbers, as long as your signs are correct and your slope has an x. The last one would be y equals -2/5 x minus 6. For question number 12, they ask you to construct and label a line graph. When you label a line graph, you put the words along the right axes, and you have to choose the correct scale. So it looks like my x values are all multiples of 5, so I'm going to go by 5s. And maybe I'll do 2 boxes is 5, another 2 boxes is 5. Maybe I'll do that so my graph isn't so cramped. Looks like 25 is the highest I need to go. And I also need to label it, so I'm going to label this time. And then I have the people in the stadium, and it seems like might go by like 400s. So maybe I'll do 400, another 2 boxes is 400, another 2 boxes is 400. But then the next one can't be 2,000, because remember, every 2 boxes is 400. Now I get to 2,000. And I have to label this side. I'll label it people in stadium. And now I can graph my points. And if I did it correctly, it should be a nice straight line. 10, 800, 15 is 1,200, and 25, right, is 2,000. And there we go. I'm not going to put an arrow here because I can't have negative time or negative people. So only one arrow on our graph. And the graph needs a title. Number of people in stadium over time. So as the time increases, the number of people in the stadium increases. Next section asks you to match the equation with the graph shown. Now you'll notice we have three different types of graphs here. One that is diagonal, and two that are special, either horizontal or this one, which is vertical. When you are diagonal, you must have two letters in your answer. And when you are one of these, you either have just a Y or just an X. Okay? So if you're diagonal, you have to have two letters in your answer. So you'll notice this one here, it only has one letter. So that's got to be wrong. These two both have two letters. So now we have to decide of these which one would be right. So let's take a look at some interesting information. Letter B has a negative X. Letter C has a positive X. So that means this one would be going downhill, this one would be going uphill. Another thing you could look at is the y-intercept. When you look at the graph, the y-intercept is at -3. And the graph is going downhill. So that makes this the best choice. Now you'll notice on number 14 that the graph is horizontal. You might remember watching the Slope Dude video of him saying, "This is zero fun. This is zero fun." And when an equation is zero fun, right? Look at that letter Z it forms, right? When it's zero fun, that means it has zero x's because it has zero slope. So the slope is 0. So if I have y equals 0x, that means there are no x's at all. There can be no x's at all in our equation. So that means that this is out and this is out. You'll also notice that the y-intercept is -1. Now question number 15, you might remember when Slope Dude went over this, he shouted, "Undefined!" And I always draw this little cartoon figure to help you remember that an undefined line has only an X letter. No Y's at all. No Y's at all. And when you look at the graph, it has an x-intercept of -3. And that concludes homework number 14.